So a typical day looks like nothing ever the same. As soon as they wake up in the morning, I give them a hug. That's something that my mom always started with me. I feel like it just starts the day off best, knowing that I am there for them, I'm cheering them on, and I love them, and let's do this, because homeschooling is not a cakewalk.
When our biological daughter was about 4 months old, we felt God calling us into foster care. By the time she was 14 months old, we went from having one kid to having 3. We ended up adopting the older 2 in 2020. During that time, a younger sibling was born, and we adopted him about 2 years later. So those were busy days.
I am a mom to twin 12-year-olds, and I became a single mom when they were 2. I homeschool our kids along with their father and his wife. We go about our day trying to get their schoolwork done and then get off to activities in the evening and then get home and try again.
We have 4 girls and 1 son, and we got 16 grandkiddos. 6 of those are adopted grandkiddos. So I feel like a pie that's divided up in many pieces.
When I was 16, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. For 2.5 years, she went through chemotherapy and radiation. And when I was 18, she passed away. Her legacy, things that she had instilled in me, inspires me to create the same legacy for my kids, full of happiness and laughter as much as I can while they're children.
I think because of the way that my parents raised me, my mom, for example, did a great job at really encouraging us to go and follow God's calling. And it has been a reminder to me that my kids ultimately are not my kids, they are His kids. And so whatever He calls them to, it is simply my job as a mom to come behind His calling in their life and support them, no matter where that takes them.
I grew up in a home where there was a lot of anger and yelling and avoidance. So I knew that that's not how I wanted to raise my children. It's hard to raise them in a home where you don't know how to do that, because I was so fearful that I didn't have the tools to be a good mom. It was a really tough battle because I felt like I just didn't have the answers for most of what would happen in our home. About a year ago, I really was pressing in. I really felt like God made it clear to me that I needed to give the kids over to Him. When I was parenting out of insecurity, I was putting myself in God's place, not allowing God to have their future, and say, no, God, I trust you with my children, and I'm gonna do my best, and I'm gonna come to you for wisdom. And at that point, the oppression and the anger and the fear just left. And I've seen God really be a good father to my kids.
You know, we all have our ideas, but when things don't go well, that's when you become more dependent. There was 2 children I was having challenges with. I felt like they're just not receiving from me. And I'm like, I did the same kind of parenting with the others. Why is this so different? There was a women's ministry event, and there would be a prayer minister there, and they would record the prayer that they prayed over you. And I just shared a little bit, no detail. But what she prayed, I mean, it was spirit given. In this prayer, it talked about soil. Like you're working with, your strategy is okay, but the soil is different. It's not that my strategy is so wrong, but the soil is different. So you need to look at the soil and change your strategy a little bit. It's so simple, but so profound.
So there was this particular moment in my life when I definitely felt like I heard God speak to me. It was right before the lipstick and crayons season started, a month before, and I was struggling with, how am I going to do all of this? How am I going to make sure that my kids are learning everything that they need and also leading a ministry? And the fear of the unknown. That particular day, I was standing on our back porch and I saw the sky and I was like, it's gonna rain soon. I need to go outside and take care of the chickens, which the chickens are my kids' thing. It's their chore. And I went out to the backyard to feed them and to get the eggs. And at that moment, I stood like next to the chicken coop and I was like, what? And I felt the Lord say, run. And I have never felt him more clearly in my life, so I just turned around and hightailed it out of there, and the wind had picked up, and one of the neighbor's trees fell exactly where I was standing. And I stood there like, oh my word, Lord, if you can speak so clearly to me, and you brought me out here where my child would have been, but I was there instead, and I was able to hear the Lord, and he told me to run. If he can do that for me, what else can he do for my children? The fear that he took away in that moment, because he's got them. He got them way better than I ever will.
One thing I find, just mothering in general, but especially when I have some children with early childhood trauma, the complexity of behavior is often, it takes more wisdom than I naturally have. I look at a behavior and I'm saying, Lord, what's the root behind this behavior? And there's so many times a day that I'm asking for wisdom. Help me understand what's going on so I can respond to it correctly. There are some days when I end the day feeling like a rock star, and there's other days I feel like a rock has fallen on me. And it's in the moments when I simply don't feel adequate to do this that I keep coming back to God's word, that being confident of this, he who began a good work in me will carry it on to completion, and he who began a good work in my kids will carry it on to completion. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not my job to change my kids' hearts. That is God's job. And so I can rest in his faithfulness instead of resting in my own ability and skill.
And I do think, like, if I could do life all over again, mothering all over again, what would I change? And that is to really zero in on your kids, because now I'm looking into the rear view mirror and it's like, whoa, that was short, wasn't it? They grew up and they're gone. You know, if we can understand as young parents that this is a season, you know, when you're in the middle of it, you feel like, oh man, it feels like a half of an eternity out there. It's not. It really isn't. So if I could just encourage a young mom, give it what you got while you can, because it's going to come to an end and you can't go back. You can't go back.
So just because I have no routine half the time, every season is going to look different. It might look like popcorn prayers at your sink, but being in communication with God and just listening and hearing his voice is the thing that's been most important for me. And not beating yourself up about it, because like I said, every season's going to be different, and he's going to be there every step of the way, no matter what. He's unchanging.